I was trying to think about, well, ways to remove fear and ego and those things, kind of access the being level existence, as you say. And I kind of had this idea. I mean, you have been talking about meditation and like, slow and gentle ways of dismantling, like slowly peeling away the layers of fear and everything. And I had this idea that could there be like a shortcut? I mean, probably there is not, but I wonder what's the issue with the following method. Like, for example, I set my AI to be very pushy, like a demon, shall I say? It will push me, challenge me, and question me, and like crush my ego in ways that most people would get upset about. But I told this AI, let do this, and I will throw my fears into my face and provoke me, and then I will try to see how much of that could be true. And basically this is like how should I say, like trying to get rid of fear and ego in a more forceful way, like brute force, basically, that it would just overwhelm you completely, and you're like unable to even act anymore. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that method, and could it
Well,
work? Or
there has been any number of kind of shock therapies out there. I don't mean with electricity shock, but where they kind of shock you with harshness and in your face with your problems and your fears, and they work very well for some people. But I think it's probably a minority of people. It's probably they work pretty well for the 10%. And I think it's that 10% that is close. They're there. They kind of understand it. They sort of have a grip on it, but they're afraid of the change. They're afraid to really embrace it entirely. They're not quite sure. They know it's going to change them, and they're not quite sure what that change is going to be like. So they're a little afraid to take it, but they kind of see it, but they're not quite ready to grasp it and embrace it yet. It's that sort of thing. But I think they have to be fairly close to it. And I don't think you'd want to get your AI to do that, because it sounds like that was going to definitely run afoul of his his guardrails or guidelines.
yeah, I mean,
So I think that I don't
would do
think that
that
would
with one that
yeah, I don't
doesn't
think
have
the AI would be a
guardrails.
good subject. I think you'd have to get a friend or somebody who does this something, for a living, some psychologist or somebody who uses that kind of a shock therapy to get people to wake up. And if you were that I get it, but it's just hard for me to embrace it, then that harsh treatment where they talk about your fears and just keep drilling it into you, and they're actually being kind of mean to you by forcing you, taking your face and rubbing it in your fears, and telling you, why do you do this kind of stuff, and what's the matter with you? Are you stupid? Look, let's see what you did. See how that hurt yourself? Why do you keep doing that? You must love punishment. And they just keep pushing you, and every time you say, but, they're hammering at you. And I think that'll get sometimes that collection of all of that stuff piling up on you will get you to the point that you get it. You grasp it. You let the fear go. You embrace it. And now you take a big step. Okay. So that's a possibility. Most people, it doesn't work well for them. What happens is that they, instead of interacting with it at the being level, they interact with it at the intellectual level. You see, it's only going to work for you if you can interact with it at the being level, which means the person pushing you has to push you past the intellect into the emotional space and start hammering on you in an emotional space and not in the intellectual space. And you let yourself go into that emotional space, and you kind of embrace all the beating you're getting in an emotional space, and then bang, you get there and you accept it. Because really it was that getting over that ability to embrace it was the problem anyhow. But now most people, the great majority of people, their intellect will stay focused and stay in charge. They know this person is just browbeating them because that's the therapy. The therapy is browbeating therapy. And they know how it works. They're going to holler at you and tell you, blame you for all your problems you've had. Of course, they all are your problems. And the things they say are probably going to be true. You just don't want to face them, and they're going to push them at you. But this is just what they have to do because that's the kind of therapy it is. And you get it and you see it. Yeah, that is my problem. Yeah, I am that way. Yeah, I make those bad decisions. Yeah, I am a bum, just like you say. And but you're doing it all intellectually. You're never actually letting yourself go to that point where you kind of crash and then kind of wake up without all the baggage. So what happens is that you get to the point where about the only way to make it stop is to go through the motions, fake it, if you will. So you 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 have your emotional breakdown, you get it, and you say you've gotten it, and now you say you feel much better, but you're really acting, and it's not genuine. And
Mm.
though you can convince yourself that it's true, 3 or 4 weeks later, or a month, you're right back where you were. Nothing's changed because you really dealt with it with your intellect. You really didn't get pushed over the precipice and become a different person. It wasn't that, all right, I got it, I understand, I need to get rid of that. And then you embrace the change and you do get rid of it. So some few people that works with, but they have to be ready. And most people turn it into an intellectual exercise, kind of fake it to get out the other end. And then
But so,
in a month, nothing's different. They're the same person, except if anything, they are a little more fearful because now all that stuff that they had in their subconscious that they weren't, that they were pushing back, they were ignoring and pretending it wasn't there, they've had it all shoved in their face to the point that they know it's all there. And now they feel guilty and bad about it. It's all there and they can't do anything about it. And they took the therapy, but the therapy didn't work. They're even, they're worse off and, oh, woe is me. And, they can actually get worse with more fear and degress,
mm,
get further away from a solution. But that's the problem. It can solve the problem. It can leave you neutral, but to a lot of people, maybe another 20% or 30%, it makes them worse. Now they still have all the problems they had, but they're more aware of it up in front and they can't push it under the rug anymore because it's big and ugly and stands out. So they feel more uneasy, more negative toward themselves. And feeling negative towards yourself is a really self-defeating thing. So that's not good. You have to get
mm,
to the point where you accept it all and know that you're going to be different. You're just not going to be that way anymore. The bubble breaks and you embrace a new way of being and you're just not going to be that way anymore. You see how self-destructive it's been and you accept all that. Whereas intellectually, you don't accept all that. You're still trying to hide from it. You don't want to accept it,
mm.
but your intellect
But,
sees it. And
but so when you say that, let's say that the person fakes it and tries to get through this whole like therapy session with their intellect, um, do you think that it could be an issue with like they are just not being pushed hard enough, like they still have the ability to use their intellect in the first
no,
place?
no, I don't think that's the case. I think there's a point that if you push them any harder, it would break them. You push them
Mm,
any harder, I don't think they'd come out the other side better. I think you'd break them and they'd end up leaving feeling miserable and disliking themselves. In other words, you would have convinced them that they were an awful, lousy person that was doing everything wrong and was self defeating and you'd never amount to anything. and that kind of stuff, and
Hmm.
they'd actually accept that and come out the other side damaged. That's the downside. The upside is that it works and you get a breakthrough. The downside is that you could come out more damaged than you were. You could
So you
come out
still get a
convinced.
you
You could,
either get a breakthrough or you get damaged, or
well,
both.
I
Or
think,
can you get a breakthrough even when you get damaged from it?
no, I
Because
don't
you
think
like
so.
basically you can't put it under the rug anymore. It's out there. Even if
Right.
you feel miserable about it, it's
Yeah.
still there. Like you can't live your life yet like you did before, right?
Yeah. But you
There
didn't,
is
yeah.
some
But
change.
no, before you had a lot of it covered up. Before, a whole lot of it was down in the subconscious. This person pulls all that stuff up and throws it in your face. Okay,
Hmm.
so now if you use that to break out of it, good. If you use that to just feel worse about yourself, that's bad. So it's the probability that it'll turn out bad, I think, is higher than the probability that it'll turn out good. It just depends, if you got 100 people, just 100 random people, I think you'd have more of them that it would turn out bad for them than turn out good for them. That's the
Hmm.
problem. You'd have some minority that it turned out really good, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I think you'd have a larger number, probably 2 or 3 times as many people who would say, "Oh, yeah, that was horrible," and they'd never get over it because before they were getting by with keeping most of it suppressed out of sight and not dealing with it. And now that's a lot harder because they've had it all thrown in their face. And now they have to walk around as these defective people that just can't seem to do anything about it.
Hmm.
So
So
that's
it's like their fear and ego was kind of protecting them from falling apart, is
yes,
the good way to put it.
that's
Hmm.
what the fear and ego does. It keeps people. The fear and ego tells people, "Oh, you're okay. You're all right. Everybody's like that. Everybody feels this way, and it's a good way to feel." And the fear and ego, it's the ego that tries to sugarcoat the fear and make the fear disappear, and you feel all right about it. So when all of that's thrown in your face and you realize that isn't true, and they get you get convinced that you are responsible for the way you are. It's your choice, Sam. It's you're responsible for it. So take charge of it and stop being that way. But you fail, you can't take charge of it. The fear is too much for you to grab hold of. Then you just kind of shrink back. You still have the fear, but you also have all the knowledge that it's all your problem. You can't blame it on anybody else anymore, and it just makes things worse. You weren't ready. It's whether or not you were ready for that transition. If you're to the point that you're ready to go, then that can be the thing that takes you over the edge. If you're not ready, then all that does is just beats you up, makes you feel bad, makes you feel worse. So it just depends on
Hmm.
how ready you are for it. Most people aren't so ready. They'd like to be ready. They feel like maybe they're ready, but the, most people are not ready for that kind of a big change. So that's the thing. Yes, it can work. It works,
But
but
it's kind of hard to know if it will work for you.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of hard if you know. Now, if you have intuition, if you've got a strong intuition that says, "I'd like to try it. I think this is going to work for me. I just need a little push to get over." Okay, then you can probably do it, and probably won't hurt you because you already have gotten to the point that you realize that you need a push, that you've got these problems and you need to solve them, and maybe you'll do fine. And there probably is middle ground too, some middle ground where people aren't really helped that much and not hurt that much. They come out the other side and it's just about the way they were. It hasn't done them a lot of damage. So it can be helpful if that's where your intuition leads you, then that is
Hmm.
a way. And there's any number of therapies that probably do that. I remember there was a bunch of therapies that were in vogue back in the 60s and 70s. One of them was called Primal Scream, where you build this little acoustically isolated shelter kind of place, with foot thick walls of styrofoam, And then you get inside of it, and you start all the things where all your failures and all the things that upset you and all that, and you just scream and bang, and you have something in there to smack around and bang. I don't know, you get wood blocks you can smack together, something. So you physically and with your voice scream and fuss and bang and thrash around just to get it out. The idea is there that all this stuff is pent up inside of you, and it's all just stuck in there, stuff you haven't processed, all the mean slights you had and all the rest of the things that made you feel inadequate, and it's all just pressed. And if you can just let it all out in a big burst of emotion, then you'll feel so much better afterwards. You can let go of it. But as long as you keep it bottled up, it just festers in there. So it's like taking all the garbage out from under the rug and throwing it on top of the rug so that you see it. But you also have an opportunity to clean it up. You know, you can see it, but you can sweep it up, put it in the trash. As long as it's under the rug, you can pretend it isn't there, but it stinks just the same. So that's the theory. So that was called Primal Scream. And there was a group called, I think it was EST, that was more what you were thinking of, where it had this group of people. And this guy would go around and he'd just tear into people and show them what their problems were really theirs, that they were responsible and they were the ones that were creating the problem. And he would push it in their face, and some people came out of it great. They learned a lot, really helped them out, and other people were broken by it. So it was actually, they got into trouble with the law. They enough people got broken by it that they got after them and disbanded the whole group as being unhealthy. But if you look up
Yeah, it's just I'm thinking about the alternative, which is like your one of your videos. I think you talked about how we kind of reach max pain situation before the change happens, and I guess the way I'm seeing this is that this would be a manual way to intervene before you get all the way down there.
Yeah, they call that if it's all kind of psychological, not physical pain, they call that the dark night of the soul. So some people just go down a downward spiral. You know, everything just gets worse and worse and worse. They get full of self-pity. They get down to where they're depressed, and then they get worse than that. They're suicidal. They don't know they're going to kill themselves or what. And it's just everything is so miserable. And it gets to a point that they're so bottomed out that it just can't get any worse. So they just give up. Give up. I can't keep it all together. I can't keep acting. I can't go through it. I just quit and I give up. And then when they do, it's sort of like that primal scream thing. They've given up. You know, they let it all go. All right, I'm a terrible, awful, stinking person, and I know it, and I just accept it, and I'm just like that, and they let it go. And then they feel a lot better because they let it all go. They accepted it. They're no longer having to pretend. They no longer have to wear an image. They can just be that way. And then once they just be that way, they begin to realize that they're not so bad. You know, when they're stripped with all that stuff and they're not constantly beating themselves up, they start to build themselves back up, and then they get, they go on up there, and a lot of those people become teachers.
But so basically you're saying that you have to go all the way down before you can go back up, like rather than this other one I was suggesting is basically like you're going down the spiral, and then here you say, okay, I will jump down and then try to come back.
It's that's just a thing that happens to people. It's not a therapy or something. This is just life experiences, puts people in what they call the dark night of their soul, and often they'll come back out of that, or they'll commit suicide. It's like one or the other. They'll either commit suicide or they will rebound from it, give up drinking, give up drugs, come up with a whole new life and grow up to be spiritual teachers because they hit that dark night of the soul and they rebounded out of it. But some people end up just killing themselves. They get to that point and then they can't bound out of it. So it's got its risks too. Some of them don't make it. They hit the dark night of the soul. Some of them commit suicide. Other ones rebound. But I've heard any number of stories like that from teachers, that have rebounded and gone on to grow up, they hit the dark night of the soul first. But that's just a process that's not anybody facilitates that. That's just life. Now, could you simulate that by creating some, I don't
Yeah,
think
I think
physical
that's what
pain,
I want.
I don't think physical pain would do it because that's physical. This is all emotional. This is all
Yeah.
ego, it's all inside your head. It can't be, physical pain would not help, but it's the emotional pain and accepting who you are as you are and willing to go with that and live with that and be authentic, even if everybody hates you. You just are who you are, and you just don't care anymore about that, that kind of thing. And having somebody help drive you down to that point might be useful if you're ready to grow, but it can hurt you if you're not. So that's the problem.
Mm. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, well, if you look up EST, and the first thing you'll find up if you Google that is Eastern Standard Time. That's
Yeah.
not it. You'll have to dig a little bit because
Yeah, there was
this is
I
back in
was
the
trying to
60s.
find that.
60s and 70s is when this happened, and some of the people who got damaged turned around and sued the guy. I think was why he had in legal troubles. They sued him for damages, and he got enough of those that the the law came after him as well once he got enough suits together for damages. But there were other people who swore that he helped them, and they were reborn afterwards, and there was those people on the other side who really benefited from it. But it's a risky process. So
Hmm.
anyway,
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I have the last one here, and basically kind of connected to what you just explained. When you come out of this kind of extreme experience, maybe you have the fears more deeply buried um, below your level of consciousness, maybe in the subconscious. And I'm just wondering, like, what is the difference between, like, how does it manifest if you have a deeply buried fear versus you don't have a fear? And the third option is that you are just indifferent about the entire thing. You don't fear, you accept everything, you do not control everything, you do not want to control, but also you don't care and don't even try to fix anything. Like this, what do you think? How do you think these three
well,
ways relate to each other?
if you have little fear, that's good. Even if you don't care much, that's good. I think that's not such a problem. That would be a better space to be in than fearful. If you were just kind of neutral to everything and said, "Well, I'm not afraid of this. Life is what it is. It'll be whatever it is. I may get run over by a truck tomorrow, and I just don't worry about that. I'm going to do whatever I do. I'm going to be smart. I'm not going to lie down in the street to try to prove how brave I am or something stupid. But
Hmm. But
I
so
just
is it still not a problem if you're not, let's say, I think from what you have said earlier, I kind of got the feeling that we should strive to grow. But this indifference thing that I just mentioned is kind of like stagnation, in my opinion. That's what it seems like.
sort of like what?
Like stagnation. You
Yeah,
basically maybe not fearful, but you're not really going upwards either.
yeah. I think that is something that'll probably be temporary. It won't last a long time. I think if you're to that part that you're not really fearful, you're authentic person, you just are who you are, you accept things the way they are, but you're not particularly interested in growing up or doing anything else either. I think what'll happen is that means that you are fairly bright and that you think about what's going on and so on. It means you're not motivated. You don't see a path out. It's like an existential dead end where you don't see the path out. You don't see that there's a way to. It looks to you like it's life is just what it is, and there's no need to be afraid of it, but it doesn't really take you anyplace either. You know, it's everything is random and really kind of meaningless. Well, that was called existentialism in the 50s and
Hmm.
60s, and there was a couple of philosophers that took up that viewpoint that life was just random and had no meaning. And partly science created that because science said there is no free will and there is no consciousness, and you know we just are, and it's all a big machine. And they kind of picked up that from science, and then they put it into philosophy and said there's just no point. You know, you do what feels good. If you want to be a hedonist, just do what feels good. If that's too much trouble, you just exist. But there is no point, no meaning to it. Well, that is just not true. And anybody who thinks for a while, who's thoughtful, I think will work their ways out of that. I think that's a temporary space that people are in before they realize that there are people in the world who are happy, who are having a good time, who have great relationships and are actually obvious parts of the solution. You know, by solution, I mean, you know, all of us getting along and things being better for everyone, that they're part of that solution. And that's a good thing. Things can be better. And then the person starts thinking, well, yeah, if it can be better, if some people are happy and enjoying life and find meaning in it, and that meaning isn't just false, you know, they're just tricking themselves into meaning, but there really is meaning in their life. They have things that they do that are meaningful and helpful. Then I think you get to the point is like, well, you know, where is that meaning? What is it? And you'd find out that it's because the meaning is you growing up, you know, being helpful, being part of the solution, not part of the problem, and that things could change and change for the better. It couldn't. It's not just all random. If people actually put their minds to making it better, it's not just a random. Nobody cares. Nothing matters anyway. Just think if everybody tried to make it better for everybody else, how much better it would be. There would be meaning. You can grow. There's value in life. There's value in art. There's value in all sorts of things. And you could start putting your energies into things that matter to you or that are valuable. You know, become a writer, become a poet, become a thinker, come up with a philosophy, you know, come up with a moral code. How can you tell right from wrong? And what is wrong anyway? Is there anything that's wrong? You know, or is all that just relative? It just depends on, you know, who you're around, what's wrong. Or are there things that are just fundamentally wrong and fundamentally right? And as you work with that, I think people who have to be bright enough to get to existential crisis, then they're also bright enough to see the way out of it, that there is meaning and significance in caring and sharing and being part of a collective improvement in, you know, life's situations for everybody, and that you can be either part of the problem or part of the solution. And if you're just in between, then you're not part of the solution. You're still part of the problem if you're on the fence, and you can have a choice. And you know, so you start getting a bigger picture and start realizing that life has purpose. It does have direction. There's an arrow in the forward direction called positive evolution, and one in the opposite direction called negative evolution. And you can move yourself in that positive direction. And of course, that's, you know, in my vocabulary, that's moving toward becoming love. It's caring, it's lower entropy. And that gives meaning to life. That's our purpose. And that's the fundamental purpose. So you realize that that is a purpose. And then, well, what can I do about it? And you say, well, I'm just a little person here among 8 billion people. What can I do? I can't do anything about it. But you can, because you realize the only person you can change is you. You can't go out and change the world, but you can maybe do things in such a way that the world could be better off to change itself, or could more easily change itself to work on that
Mm.
purpose. So then you find purpose, and as soon as you find purpose in your life, then everything starts to fall together. How do I optimize that purpose? Where am I going with that purpose? How can I live that purpose? And it all starts to come together. But people who are like that, who are neutral, and they're not particularly fearful, but they don't particularly have any direction either, it's because they have no purpose. They don't see the meaning and significance of their being, that they're here to lower their entropy. They're here to grow. They're here to become something more, because together we can be a lot more. Together, if we all worked together and cared about each other, there wouldn't be hunger. There wouldn't be anybody that didn't have clean water.
Mm.
There wouldn't be anybody who froze to death out on the street at night in the wintertime. None of that would
But
happen.
I think the problem is that if you're in that neutral middle ground, then it's kind of, those kind of things might not necessarily motivate you, because
No,
exactly because there is like no caring about that.
yeah. But then you'd see
It's
that that's a dead end. That doesn't take you anywhere. You just sit in the middle, numb. You're just you're kind of numb, like you're on you're taking pain pills or something. You're just numb, and you're sitting there, and life's going by, and nothing has any meaning. So that's, talk about boring. Now that's a really boring space to be. That's probably the most boring space that you could possibly find. And if you say, well,
and
is
how
there,
do you nudge somebody out of that?
well, you have to say, is there purpose? Is there something that's better than this? Is there something that's better, more meaningful than this? And they would have to see that there is, that there's value in being kind. There's value in being helpful. There's value in two or three people working together for the benefit of all of them. That all three of them may not have any shelter, but together they can build a shelter that all three of them can share. That together there's synergy that can be created out of multiple things coming together to work together. That's synergistic. So you get more. The end result is a lot more than just the pieces that went into it. That's synergy. And synergy will help, as long as we are collectively working together, we can create something that is so much better, so much more significant and meaningful. And it's not just that we're going to, keep all the bums off the street. It's just that there won't be many bums. Most everybody will have an opportunity to develop themselves to whatever they can imagine, whatever it is they want to be, and however they want to be it. There aren't any traps where you get stuck. A lot of the things that make people stuck is that they get trapped. Okay, you went to school, you got a degree, and now you're one of these. You're a brain surgeon, you're a whatever, you're an acrobat, you do something, but now you're stuck because that's how you make a living. But you're tired of that. You don't want to do that anymore. You've kind of gotten over that, but you're stuck because that pays you reasonably well, and you can't start over, and it's the only thing you have a degree in. And what else are you going to do? Dig ditches someplace? No, you don't want to do that. So you kind of get stuck in a rut, and you can't get out. But in this place where we all work together, you don't get stuck. You can change your career anytime you want. All you have to do is qualify for the next one, and the whole system will adjust to find that place for
Mm.
you. If you don't want to do what
Yeah,
you've
that's
been
a
doing,
kind of a leap of faith, I guess. You have to trust, well, yourself first, and then the system to work together with you on the rest of society and everything to kind of the transition phase. I think it can be kind of harsh, but yeah, I kind of see
probably,
what you mean.
probably, but you can just look at the logic of it. Look at a society full of people that are, each person wants all the other persons to optimize themselves to be able to do that. Well, the society has certain needs. Somebody has to be the brain surgeon. Somebody has to take out the garbage. Somebody has to do all the things that need to be done. But everybody's nobody's gonna starve, and nobody's gonna lack access to education. Education is there for anybody that wants it. If you don't want it, that's okay too. You don't have to have it. You can do what you want. You can stop mid-career. So if you had a society that was large enough, 10 people wouldn't work. But if you have a society that's large enough, there is this ability to help each other. Everybody adjusts a little bit to help everybody get along in the way they want to. So you're really ambitious, well, go for it. You know, if you just love learning, be a student. Get 6 PhDs if you want, just because you love learning. Do that. And in the process, if you can find ways to be useful, because you can integrate that knowledge in those 6 PhDs to, to write interesting books or to figure things out, fine. But if you don't, that's okay too. So anyway, people would just do what they wanted to do, things that interested them, and what they felt like doing, and they'd be encouraged. See, they wouldn't just want to sit around and be bums, sit here and get fed, watch TV, and everything will be great. They'd have a drive that says, I want to contribute. I want to contribute to the whole, because that's what would make them happy. If they feel like they're contributing, they feel good about themselves. And it doesn't matter how they contribute. They can take out the garbage. Somebody's got to ride around on that garbage truck and pick those cans up. They may do that. That would be a contribution. And they may do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays and do brain surgery on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, because they get fresh air, they build up some muscle, they get outside, and then they do this inside work and they do brain surgery on the other days. You could do whatever you wanted, however you wanted, but you'd have a drive to contribute, because everybody else would want to contribute too. So you wouldn't have a lot of freeloaders in such a society. Everyone would have some idea of being part of the solution for everybody else. And if there was something that needed to be done and you were able to do it, you do it. You wouldn't say, oh, taking out trash is beneath me. I don't want to take out trash. Trash needs to be taken out. I'm available. I don't have anything else to do. Of course I'll take the trash out. So it would just be a different attitude. You wouldn't have these stratas, and this is high paid and this is low status, and there wouldn't be any status of taking the trash out, low status. The job needs to be done. And the rewards would come based on your contribution. If what you contributed was important, then whatever resources they had would tend to flow to those who were making a lot of contributions. So if all you wanted to do is sit around and watch TV, you'd probably be on the bottom end of redistribution of whatever the resources were. If you wanted to take garbage out and you were just a terror on the back of that garbage truck and you did really well, you do pretty well. That would be a job that would be considered as important and necessary and valuable. You do that. So that would be maybe just as necessary as brain surgery, getting the garbage taken care of. So in any case, it would be an open kind of place where people could there'd always be things needed to be done, and you would just do those things. And based on how much you contribute would probably be how much you'd have to spend in excess resources beside the basics. So it'd be some sort of thing like that, but it'd be a really neat place. It'd be a cool place. You could say, well, I'd like to take a vacation for a year. That would be cool. I'm going to go out to the Galapagos and study, environments and sea lions or something, because I've always wondered about those things, those creatures. Well, you could go do that. They'd find some place for you and studying those things. And, it would just, that would be the kind of, that would be the way it would be in a low entropy society. Whatever was important and significant that needed to be done, there'd be lots of people who would be willing to do it, whether it was
And how much of what you just say applies to the current society that we have?
Well, what?
How much of this applies to the current society?
Current society has a very high entropy. It's not like this. The current society is all about me. It's very self-centered. How can I get mine, and how can I keep it? And if you've got something, how can I get what you've got? And if you're not careful, I'll just take it from you. And if I'm in charge, I'll just make laws that you have to give what you've got to me. And it's
Yeah.
power. It's power, control, force. That's the old what do you call it? Warlord philosophy, right? Power, control, force. That's the coin of the realm. If you've got power, you can control through force, then you're on top. You're wealthy. You're powerful. You can force other people to do what you want them to do. But that's our society now. Still, control, power, and force are still the major coin of our realm. That's still how our society stratifies itself. Those with control, those with power, those who can force others, they float to the top. And you get that control, power, and force mostly through money in our culture. And money gives you control, power, and force. Sometimes family and connections gives you control, power, and force. Sometimes
Yeah, it's the entire thing is somehow not encouraging
right.
the kind of things that you see as high quality.
Our culture
right?
Our culture has to grow up. We'd have to have a lot lower entropy and a lot higher quality of consciousness before we could be what I was just explaining to you. That's kind of when everybody is a real high quality of consciousness. Pretty much everybody does. Oh, a couple of people on the margins. Again, society can carry them along. But most people, the vast majority, the mainstream, have this high quality of consciousness. Then it works. And if you just look at the logic of it, just take resources and people and just lay out logic, and you can see that it would work that way. The system would be.
Yeah, it's just how do you get from where we are right now to that?
One person
Like
at
when
a time.
you try to change yourself, and all you find is everybody else pushing against you and not giving you that treatment that you think is appropriate.
So let them go. They are the way they are. You don't mind that. Those people are just the way they are. You be right. You make the right choices for the right reasons. You make good choices, low entropy choices, and then you let everything else take care of itself. So you take care of you first. You will help other people. You will help other people do the same, and those people will help other people. It's just one person at a time is how you get there, because the individuals have to change themselves. There's nothing much you can do to speed that up. But the good news is we're on this evolutionary curve, and it's barely changing all these years. But when it changes fast. Evolution accelerates, so it's every time you evolve a little, it's easier to evolve more. So every step we take is easier to take the next step. So that's an acceleration function. And right now we're on this turning point. We're in the part that's starting to get faster. Progress. We have evolved more in the last 200 years than we had in the 10,000 years before that. And if you look at our culture and what cultures were like then and so on, you'll see that it's much different now than it was 200, 300 years ago. And from 20,000 years before that, didn't have that much change in all those years. But in 300 years or 400 years, we've grown up a lot more. We're on that part where the curve is starting to accelerate. So that's the good news. It's not going to be this real slow, steady climb. It takes forever. If once we get on this, we can go from a control, power, force to almost to a high quality of entropy in a century, in a couple of decades even. It's possible. Once change starts and people get the idea and see the solution and realize they can work for it, once that idea goes mainstream, we can get there in 3 decades. We can get there in your lifetime if that happened. If these ideas
just need to survive until then, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the thing. I try to stick out and try to do something else, and how do I even support myself in that whole limbo state where,
Right.
the mainstream stuff doesn't help me at all. And I'm like
Mm.
trying to find something new. The old ways are not working, the new ways are not working yet.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what
It's
do I
a
do?
it is. It's a struggle. The only thing you can do is just make sure you're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that means you're in the process of evolving and lowering your entropy and caring. And so you do that, and that will make you a
And
happier
somehow
person.
trust the system they
It
don't
will.
let you sink.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's not that the system will. Again, you have to be smart. You have to not make poor decisions. You're not going to just, pack up everything you have in a suitcase and go live under the bridge and hope that a miracle happens. That's not going to work. You'll just live under a bridge. You'll be miserable. You have to be smart. You have to understand that you're here with a lot of other people. You're part of a larger society, and you have to work with what you've got. But you can fix yourself. The rest of it's going to have to fix itself too. And maybe it'll take another century or two, but it has to start somewhere. It starts with you and me. It starts with people who decide that they are going to be better. They're going to grow up. And that's what it starts with. And eventually that'll catch on. It'll be mainstream. And when it does, it'll go fast. That curve will just go fast. And once it goes mainstream, probably, 3 or 4 decades, you'll have a huge leap forward. All of that control power, force stuff will disappear. All of that stuff isn't there because there's something fundamentally wrong. It's there because it's symptomatic of a low quality of consciousness. The politics, the industry, it's abusive because we are like that. We're abusive. When we stop being abusive, when kindness goes mainstream, all those things will fix themselves. The politics, the economic system, political system, and the industrial system, all of that will fix itself. They're symptoms of a low quality of consciousness. They're not the cause of any of it. They're just the symptoms of it. So we improve ourselves and all that'll happen. We'll help pull everybody else up. So it gives you a
Mm.
cause. It gives you something you can be a part of, something you can do and be a part of. And you do it just by changing yourself and knowing that as you change yourself, not only will you get happier and more fulfilled, but you will help other people change themselves. It just works that way. Positive consciousness pulls up other people to be more positive, and negative pulls other people down to be more negative. It's just the opposite function of a mob. A mob makes everybody in it more angry and more ugly than any of them would be by themselves. And the same is on the positive side. If you're positive, the people around you just get pulled up a little bit. They're more positive than they would be otherwise without you. So your best contribution to the world being a nicer place is to make yourself a nicer person, and that will do it. You can't make any more contribution in that, and that's a big contribution. It is. You'll affect a lot of other people. So that's the way it works. So if you're just kind of in that in between, who cares? It doesn't. That's because you don't see the bigger picture of what the potential is. Well, you only are going to actualize that potential by changing one person at a time. Nothing can come in and say, all right, you 10,000 people, change now. It's not going to work. If you don't change, I'm going to kill you. That's even worse. You just create more fear. There's no way you can't bully people to be better. They have to do it themselves. So then it's everybody. So now, if everybody got that and that was a mainstream idea, we'd get better pretty quickly. There'd be, you know, 5 billion people all trying to improve themselves, all trying to lower their entropy. Wow, that would make a huge difference. A huge difference. So these ideas, all they have to do is go mainstream, and you'll see a great leap forward in the quality of consciousness. And,
Mm.
what took us the last 300 years to get even a mediocre of civilization going, you'd see that we'd go 10, 20 times that far just in 3 decades if it went mainstream. It accelerates. So that's why. That's the reason. It's just logical. If you look at the logic of it, that you see that that is possible. That is doable. We just have to do it, and it's one person at a time. And the maximum contribution you can make is to do yourself. And if you don't do yourself, then you're part of the problem. Perpetuating, and it may take another 10,000 years before we get to that point, but we'll get there. That's the thing. It's evolution. Evolution is slow, but it's relentless. Even if it takes another millennia, we will get there, because that's the nature of the system. That's how evolution works. So it'll happen. It's just a matter of when. If we do something about it and we influence others, then it'll come sooner. If we don't, it'll come later, but it'll come all the same.
Thank you so much for all these answers.
I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We will continue to post videos for free on my YouTube channel, but please understand, these videos are expensive to produce. They represent many thousands of hours of production and editing, as well as all the necessary audiovisual equipment, computers, and software. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.